Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Dragon Age Veilguard. I know. I said that I'd be finished with it the last time around, but hey, after my very spur-of-the-moment attempt to fix, air quotes, the game with some basic writing choices and RPG concepts, I know, shocking. Who would ever thought RPG in your RPG? Oh, no. Anyway, yeah, it was well received, even if it was spur-of-the-moment, and I, as my own biggest critic, don't think that it's anything that impressive. I can do better. And this is me doing better. I would rather sit down with you guys and talk about story concepts and writing and ideas and what could have been than sit here repeating the same old lines of, oh, Veilguard bad, blah, blah, blah. We know, we get it. We're all in mourning. It is what it is. There's 1,000 channels out there on YouTube that will milk this controversy for about 1,000 years, just repeating the same crap over and over again. I try not to be that. I'd rather talk to you guys about what could have been, and what I would have liked, and what we could have had, and, you know, that kind of stuff. Be a bit more positive, if we can be. Essentially, providing a critique of what we got by providing examples of what we could have had. So, ladies and gentlemen, grab your popcorn, sit back and enjoy, and we can all simply pretend that Veilguard never happened.
This war is far from over.
For all intents and purposes, dear viewer, this is the origin story for your Rook, for your character. Not Bioware's self-insert Rey Skywalker character, yours. Specifically. These are origin stories, backgrounds, prologues, if you will, effectively allowing you short missions, not too complex, that simply give you the ability to make decisions that will shape who your character is as a person. I have a few origin stories in mind that I may also do videos for depending on how well this is received, but for the sake of this video, you are a Grey Warden recruit. On your way to Weishaupt to undertake the joining ceremony, you'll talk with your fellow recruits and establish with them why exactly you came to join the Order. Be it glory, maybe the Darkspawn killed your family, you left your Dalish clan, you were exiled from Orzammar or Kal Sharok. Straight off the bat, you'll be able to establish why your character is joining the Grey Wardens. Or perhaps, to simplify it for game limitations, you could have it be that your reason for joining the Wardens changes depending on what race you pick. If you're an elf, it's something to do with your clan. If you're a dwarf, you came from Kal Sharok, exiled to the surface for some unknown reason. If you're a human, perhaps you came from Devinter or a minor noble family from the Anderfels. The possibilities are endless. We do have to take into consideration when doing this story stuff that video games have limitations. I can't just write a book and go, yeah, all of that will be able to fit into a game. There are indeed limitations. We have to accept this when dealing with a video game format. I can throw 1,000 ideas at a wall, not all of them are gonna stick, not all of them will make it into a final product. So I'll try to stay as realistic as possible, and acknowledge that some things may not be able to fit into a game. But this is Bioware. They're backed by EA, they have all the money in the world, they've had all the time in the world. Nothing I'm saying here is out of the realms of possibility. So long as one has at least semi-competent writers on your staff team, which Bioware doesn't have. They definitely don't have. Anyway, you arrive at Weishaupt, where a grand ceremony is underway. Hundreds of Warden recruits are piling up. A ceremony which is extravagant. Just a stark contrast to the ceremony and the joining that we witnessed in Origins, where Duncan was rushed, highlighting the differences in the Anderfels, Wardens, and maybe Fereldans, who are more down-to-earth and straight to the point. Weishaupt is nobles and politicians playing at Warden. In essence, if you don't know, the Anderfell Wardens are basically nobles. A lot of them are nobles. They essentially rule the Anderfels, whose people rely on them more or less more than they do the actual ruling family. So there's a lot of politics in Weishaupt. A hell of a lot more than you might expect from, say, Fereldans Grey Wardens. I'd use this opportunity to really highlight the fact that the culture is very different in Weishaupt compared to what we might be used to from Origins. There are two distinct factions amongst the Wardens of Weishaupt. Those who follow the First Warden, and those who follow the Anderfell's Commander of the Grey. Two characters who are essentially the right and left hands of the Wardens. The First Warden is technically in charge, but the Commander commands a lot of respect, and is more of a hands-on, traditional Grey Warden that you might expect to see from, say, Ferelden or any other area of Thedas. He's not a politician, he's a fighter. Off the top of my head, these two factions can be called the Nobles and the Commons, with the highbrow insult towards the Commander of being the Commander of the Commoners, which is no doubt an insult that came directly from the Nobles. It has that smug air of superiority about it, and doubtless is only ever said behind the man's back. But I digress. You arrive at Weishaupt, are briefly introduced to the schism between the Wardens, an uneasy peace that exists between them, and you undertake the joining ritual. Grand and grandiose and impressive and shiny, lots of gold and silver and fancy words. Just the complete and absolute opposite of the joining ritual we did in Origins. And all completely unnecessary. But tradition is of the utmost importance to the First Warden. Tradition, duty, and protocol. He is not a bad man, ladies and gentlemen. He's not some cartoony evil villain, but he is proud, bordering on arrogance. The man is experienced, confident, and of utmost in charge. He might not be as friendly as the commander. He might even be a bit of an asshole sometimes, and certainly not quite the fighter the commander is, but he is a leader of men. There's a reason that half of the Wardens follow him, without question. He is competent. He is highly competent. He's just a bit of an asshole about it, and kind of extremely arrogant. But he is not an evil man. The point that I'm getting across here is, at some point during the story, you will have a choice between the commander or the First Warden. Neither of these characters are perfect, because nobody is. They are human. They are flawed. Your choice of picking sides will depend heavily on who you are as a character, on who your rook is. But we'll get to that later on. For now, your joining ritual goes on without a hitch. No problems. Although several recruits of the 100 or so that showed up die. Drinking Darkspawn blood is, after all, poisonous and liable to kill a man. As you raise the silver chalice to your lips and drink of the blood, you witness recruits around you choking and dying. Your eyes grow heavy, you collapse to the floor, and you dream of growling in the dark, a voice whispering in the shadows. A nightmare that grips your very soul. Fear and terror fermenting in your bones. Finally, you awake a Grey Warden. The lowest of the Order, but a Grey Warden nonetheless. And, nonetheless, the laziest of them, apparently. You have slept far longer than the other recruits. Many, in fact, thought that you would die. Sure enough. Proving them all wrong, however, you awaken. Alive. Very much alive. Shaken from your ordeal, to be sure, but otherwise alive. Only to be dragged from bed and basically told to get to work. Your first trial is upon you. You're given arms and armor, as befitting your station as a new recruit, which is nowhere near as shiny or fancy as all the nobles' armor, along with orders to meet up with your fellow recruits and a senior warden in the courtyard, who greet you with at best indifference and at worst open hostility, depending on your race. He doesn't like elves. And you can tell from his golden, shiny, polished attire that he's clearly a member of the noble faction. But regardless, the man is here to be your guide. Here purely to make sure that the new recruits don't get themselves killed too quickly. And as is usually the case with recruits, your first mission, your first trial as it were, is to investigate reports of increased Darkspawn activity in a certain area of the Anderfels. You soon arrive at your destination, or near enough. You see smoke on the horizon coming from where the village in question is supposed to be. Your conversation with one of the recruits being cut short as he explains his backstory, you arrive at the village to find it burnt and deserted. The senior warden can sense Darkspawn nearby, warning his recruits of the impending danger, though none of them sense it, as he explains with a grunt how the recruits are incapable of sensing the Darkspawn immediately. It will take time for them to be of use. And as if on cue, an ogre crashes through a nearby building, smashing the wall around and grabbing one of the recruit's horses by its neck, flinging it across the town square, crushing the recruit underneath. As another horse bucks its rider from its saddle, the ogre crushes the recruit's head like a ripe melon, and the senior warden calls to arms, smacking his horse firmly on the ass and sending the beast away to safety as he draws his sword. Here, you get your first real taste of combat, fighting the ogre. The ogre, which is basically a mini-boss, and you can't kill it. This is a foe beyond your caliber. A fresh recruit who hasn't even unlocked his warden senses yet stands no chance against an ogre, which is why the senior warden is here to protect he's dead. Charging at the beast, the ogre smacks him aside after a few traded blows and flings him against a nearby building, knocking the man unconscious. You witness yet another recruit slain by the beast before it turns its attention fully to you. As you pick up the senior warden's shield in a desperate attempt to defend yourself, the ogre raises its hands up high and goes for the killing blow. You close your eyes, accepting your fate, as the screen goes black for but a moment before you hear a clang and open them to find a figure standing before you, shield raised up, holding back the beast with an inhuman strength. Your savior growls a command to get up to your feet. You do so, grabbing your sword and joining him in the battle, and together you manage to slay the ogre. Getting a better look at your savior, he's clad from head to toe in rusty plate, with a large, dented Warden shield. He asks, in a guttural tone as deep as the deep roads, whether or not you are harmed. And, surprisingly, you're no worse for wear. A little bruised, perhaps, but far better faring than most of the other wardens present. You find the senior warden hunched up against the wall, broken and bloody, dying. With his last breaths, he warns you that Darkspawn are close, and informs you that protocol demands they return to Weishaupt immediately and report to the ogre. Where there is one such creature, there will be more, and that a breach to the deep roads may have been opened nearby. The senior warden with his last breath tells you to do your duty, and only when the senior warden's final breath is drawn does your rusted savior inform you that he is right. A breach to the deep roads has indeed been opened. A new entrance has appeared, and Darkspawn are pouring out. Which leads you ultimately to what I will define as your origin choice. Your origin decision. The consequences of what you do now will reflect your character moving forward. For simplicity's sake, we'll say that you have one of three options. 1. You can do exactly as you were ordered. Follow protocol, do your duty, and report back to the Grey Wardens of Weishaupt to inform them of the danger. And this option will be presented to you by one of the surviving recruits, who believes that this is what they should be doing. Only for this option to be countered by the very man that saved your life. The Rusted Knight speaks up, saying that if you leave now, he will be left alone to defend the nearby village that will almost certainly fall long before the Wardens can send help. That introduces option 2. Go with the Rusted Knight, your savior, and help defend the nearby village. Or, if you press the Rusted Knight for alternatives, there must be some other way, some way to save everybody. He admits, reluctantly, that technically, if you could seal the breach, you may well save as many lives as possible. But doing so is reckless. Bold, but reckless. One of the recruits points out how the Darkspawn would surely sense them, but the Rusted Knight ensures the man that he possesses a magic that will disguise them from the Horde. Your choice here will echo for eternity. Okay, no, not eternity, but it will affect and establish the staging ground of who your character is. Will you do your duty, return back to Weishaupt, and sacrifice the few to perhaps save the many? Will you go to the village to defend it, risking your own life and the lives of your fellow recruits in the process, against a foe that you may not be able to defeat? You may perhaps save one village, but there aren't nearly enough wardens present to defend them all. Or you could be bold and reckless, using the supposed magic of this mysterious Rusted Knight to sneak around the Darkspawn and somehow seal the breach to the deep roads. No choice here is perfect, ladies and gentlemen. No matter what you do, people are going to die. It's a matter of how many people are going to die. Your choice here will reflect the reception you receive upon returning to Weishaupt. The first warden may respect you following protocol, but will still be upset at the loss of the senior warden, while the commander may respect a more heroic approach, sealing the breach and saving everybody. As many as you could. As in sealing the breach, every recruit that accompanies you will die. Because in death, sacrifice. I really want the Warden origin to hammer in the fact that you can't save everybody. One of the good things about having an origin or a backstory like this that you can actually play is establishing that your actions matter, that there will be consequences to your decisions. You can seal the breach and save as many people as you can, but your fellow recruits will not survive to see your victory. You can defend one village, but fail to save the others. Or turn tail and do your duty, getting reinforcements from the Grey Wardens and saving more towns than you would have otherwise. Saving many at the cost of the few. Whatever your choice, upon returning to Weishaupt, you are scolded to various degrees. The very best reception you could hope for is following protocol, but even then, a senior warden is dead, a member of the noble faction, nonetheless. The first warden will commend you for following protocol and doing your duty, but scolds you heavily for allowing a senior warden to die. The worst reception you could receive would probably be sealing the breach, because you return alone, with a story of heroics and sacrifice, all of your recruits dead, the senior warden dead, and your protocols ignored. Either way, some form of punishment is due for your actions. And you're in luck. A recent request has arrived from Minrathous asking for more swords to bolster their ranks. A largely boring position, cushiony and safe, but the first warden believes that this will teach you some humility and respect for your betters. So, as we near the end of the origin, we head for Minrathous, which will essentially be the ending point of every origin. More or less, one way or the other, you will end up in Minrathous. In the case of the Warden story, here is where you'll meet your fellow recruit, Davran. Fresh to the Order himself, he longs to escape Minrathous and live a life more heroic and wardeny. Sitting in the city as basically a glorified police force for the Tevinters was not his idea of what being a Grey Warden was supposed to be. He's your cookie-cutter Grey Warden. He's almost an Alistair, I want to say. Very naive. He wants to be the hero. Your time in Minrathous will be short for the prologue. You'll have 1 or 2 quests, just setting up what you're doing in the city, specifically. The Warden's probably going in more into the politics of it, telling you fairly briefly how the Wardens are perceived in Tevinter, and that is not particularly well. They aren't hated, but they aren't very well respected. The Tevinters view them as unnecessary, and the current First Warden has a annoying habit of poking his nose in places where he's not welcome. The Imperium, after all, hasn't seen a blight since the Exalted Age. The Darkspawn are largely viewed as a distant threat, easily bested. After all, the Doglords of Ferelden handled the 5th Blight all by themselves, with only 2 Grey Wardens. And what is the might of Ferelden compared to the might and glory of the Imperium? Nothing. Ridiculous notion, to be sure. Veilguard completely and absolutely ignores what the Grey Wardens are doing in Tevinter, if they're even there. I don't want to ignore that. I want to establish how the locals feel about the Order, which I can only assume is very meh, who gives a shit. Either way, after a mission or 2 in Minrathous, establishing yourself, the Wardens, and your relationship with Davran, we'll say it skips ahead about a week, and you happen to meet Varric in a bar, looking to hire people to help him find his friend. Whatever your origin, you eventually end up here, speaking to Varric in the bar, looking for his friend, air quotes. He has some leads about the Venatori, and some connection to his friend, because he doesn't just blindly trust you with who his friend is, but he does see that you're capable, and he needs capable people to help him track down Solus, leading to a quest throughout the city, because one way or another, you do accept. This is one of the few instances where you don't really have much of a choice. In a similar vein to Dragon Age Origins, you don't have a choice but to go with Duncan. Certain story points just need to happen for the story to move onward. This is one of those cases. You might have slightly differing dialogue choices depending on your origin. An elf is going to talk to Varric differently and have different things to say. A Tevinter noble is going to have different things to say. Grey Warden, different things to say. You get the gist. Whatever the case, you agree with Varric, leading to you hunting down the Venatori throughout the city, and ultimately finding an Alluvion. As the person of interest that you're after runs through the mirror, you're left with very little choice but to follow. With a small army of Tevinter Templars hot on your tail, trying to arrest you for, fighting and causing a ruckus in the city. You go through the portal, Varric turns around and uses Bianca to shoot the mirror, shattering it and stopping the Templars from following, but stranding you in the Arlafan forest, where ultimately things go about as normal as expected. You do manage to track down Solus, though not before being captured by Dalish clans, elves that have sided with Solus, as he's spun them some tale or another. As the ritual is underway, Solus forces you to watch, to prove that what he's doing is for the best. Varric will try to talk to Solus, or outright attack him, depending on your Inquisitor's choice at the end of Inquisition. After all, Varric and Harding have been sent by the Inquisition to track him down. Either way, the ritual is interrupted and the elven gods are freed. Be it through your actions, Varric's actions, or pure hubris on Solus's part. Solus vanishes into the Fade, trapped in the prison of his own creation. You, the Dalish elves, Varric, and everyone present are swept aside like bugs, unimportant and unconcerning, as the elven gods are freed. And here our story begins in earnest. With the elven gods freed, the Dalish clans split, half of them following the elven gods, while the other half retreat into the forest, taking you with them. Some time passes, as you have been knocked unconscious, and are being healed by the Dalish, as they have questions for you. You dream of more or less everything that's happened since you've arrived here. A short recap of the consequences from your origin story. The faces of the dead recruits flashing before you, the first wardens scolding you, the choices that led you to this moment. This brief series of flashbacks will be different depending on each origin story and the choices you've made. From here on out, several paths lay before you. You can stay in the Arlafan forest, investigate the situation with the elves, return to Tevinter and follow leads there, or head to Weishaupt, reporting back to the Grey Wardens, where the consequences of your origin story will be the most relevant. Will you return to the village that you saved, or the one that you left to die? Will you meet the Rusted Knight, who is a potential companion, and secretly a Darkspawn. A truth that will come to light should you get to know the man, as he will only remove his helmet once you gain his trust, or figure out his secret yourself. The Grey Warden having the unique ability to sense Darkspawn, with enough dialogue choices at the right times, you may become suspicious. And how you react is entirely up to you. Each of these areas, however, will act as a quest hub. Arlathan, Minrathous, Weishaupt. And where you focus your efforts, because you can't be in all places at once, will affect the outcome of the first act. This is, however, all part of the greater, grander story, which I haven't written, outside of basic concept pieces. In my mind, Act 1 is several roads leading to the same place, the Siege of Weishaupt. An epic, grand finale of sorts, only for you to realize at the end of it that this Blight's threat is greater than you realize. But that is all for now, ladies and gentlemen. This video is purely the Grey Warden origin, and I have a few other origin stories, concepts to go over, depending how well this is received. At the end of the day, none of this is going to fix Veilguard. There is no fixing Veilguard, but it is fun to come up with my own little stories and talk to you guys about what could have been. At present, I'm playing through Dragon Age 2 and then going to play through Dragon Age Inquisition again. And I'm just cooking up ideas in my head of like the things that could have happened, the consequences, and the way it could have highlighted so many things in past games. The possibilities are really endless. This game really could have been a love letter to fans. It could have been a climactic, cinematic, epic ending to the series. The last blight to ever threaten Thedas. All of your choices coming together into a final game. And don't tell me they don't have the money or the time to pull it off. They absolutely did. But the development was a nightmare. They changed products like 50 times, and fired like 500 of their staff members. So it was never going to be what we wanted it to be. The failure of Veilguard has not come as any surprise to me. But as a die-hard Dragon Age fan, for Christ's sake, I made the entire map of Thedas in Dragon Age Total War, which you'll see in the background of this video, most likely. I'm a fan. I love this series. I love this IP, and it breaks my heart. It breaks my heart to see it end on this note. So I will at least mourn in my own way, basically making up fanfiction of what we could have had, potentially. At the end of the day, nothing I say or do is going to fix this video game. That's not my intention, because it's impossible. Ultimately, you can't even mod the Frostbite engine to a degree necessary to fix any of this. It's a terrible engine for modding. But at the very least, we can daydream about the game that we almost had, the game that we could have had, if all the stars had aligned. But I digress. I thank you all for watching. That is all for now. If you liked this video, let me know. Leave your comments if you've got ideas for stories, stuff that you wanted to see. It's nice to have conversations about this stuff. The majority of you are level-headed individuals, and I have like one stupid comment in 1,000. But hey, welcome to the internet. I have other ideas for Origin videos, lore stuff, concepts and ideas and stuff like that. I kind of like these videos. I hope you like them too. But let me know, and we'll see what happens in the future. That is all for now. Thank you for watching. Soul out.